Appreciate it. And before we get started, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. A couple of announcements to make before we get started. The first is that we have shifted our interview process and are no longer looking for a president of baseball operations. We had limited access in some cases, and as a result have decided that we're going to focus more on the GM position at this point, or exclusively on the GM position. What that means is that I will probably be more involved on the baseball side than I originally expected, but we'll continue my team president functions, but we'll be more involved on the baseball side than originally anticipated. In terms of the GM search, that's ongoing. We've talked to a number of people, and we'll continue to do so, and hope that we make progress through Thanksgiving and into the first week of December. So we'll see how that goes, but the focus now is on a general manager. Secondly, with respect to our managerial position, I informed Luis Rojas earlier today that he would be the manager in 2021. Very happy about that decision. I think Luis is happy as well. And I'm looking forward to working with Luis, with our new general manager, the rest of the baseball operations group, toward a successful 2021 season. So Luis is going to be back. Those are really the two opening remarks. Happy to answer questions on those topics or any other at this point. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sandy. And a reminder for everyone to click on the participants tab at the bottom, followed by the raise your hand tab. And we will call on you. Please remember, so our live audiences on all the social outlets, from Met's social channels to SNY's channels, can understand and follow along. Please state your name and affiliation, and then follow that with your question. Our first question will be from Steve Gelbs.
Hey, Sandy. As Harold just said, Steve Gelbs, SNY. So just for a little further clarification, you said that you didn't necessarily get granted, the permission, I would assume, to talk to the candidates that you had in mind, or got some pushback there. Was it simply a case of you having certain candidates in mind and realizing they wouldn't be available to you? Or as you got further along in the process, did you feel as if a president of baseball operations was not as necessary as you had initially envisioned it?
Well, look, the structure of a president of baseball operations and a general manager is in part an attempt to bring more talent into the organization. And with the position of president of baseball operations, typically one would get access to individuals, for example, who are currently general managers under a president of baseball operations. In some cases, we were really looking at potential lateral moves. We thought that, and look, we respect the fact that individuals are under contract with other clubs. There are individual cases that might involve, prior history locally here in New York or what have you. There might be circumstances that would suggest that perhaps a lateral move would be possible. In each of those instances, that wasn't the case. With respect to those that we might attempt to elevate to that position, there really were only a couple of conversations that we had. Based on those conversations, and again, limited access, we decided to forego that position, that possibility of a president of baseball operations position, and focus on the general manager. So it was mostly a combination of inability to get access to individuals for a lateral move, and in one or two other cases, for example, there was a very strong family issue that I think prevented a candidate from moving forward. But we're happy with where we are. We've canvassed the possibilities, and as a result, we've begun to focus on the GM position.
with regards to the GM position, do you have a timetable where you either expect or hope to have someone in place? And is a lack of someone in that position right now preventing you at all from making any sort of moves? Or if an opportunity arose player acquisition wise currently, would you pull the trigger if it made sense?
No, I think that it's a good question. I think that we're not concerned about a timeline with respect to this person that we hire. Of course, we'd like to get that person in place sooner rather than later. But I absolutely do not believe that it's preventing us from moving forward on the player front and all of the other issues that are presented in the off season. We have meetings daily. We've got very capable people in the organization at various levels, and that's not impeding us at all.
Ed Coleman, your line is open.
Hey, Sandy. Happy birthday, by the way, a day late.
Thanks.
Can you share with us how many people you've interviewed thus far and how many you may have on tap and what the process might be for second interviews, et cetera?
Yeah, so we've, with respect to the GM position, we've interviewed a half dozen. And, we will decide at some point whether we need a second round for perhaps presenting one or two candidates to Steve. Steve, this is a decision that Steve will be involved in as well. But right now, we've interviewed about 6, and we'll see whether second interviews, third interviews are necessary. We just haven't made that decision yet.
Thanks.
Okay. Next question is from Mike Puma.
Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Mike.
A couple of things. You said Luis Rojas is coming back. You obviously have some experience with him from previous time in the organization. Just tell me what appeals to you about Luis.
Well, there are a couple of things, and I think I've stated this before. Louis as an individual, as a person who's able to relate to his players, both in terms of their professional work as well as their personal lives. I think he's exceptional in that regard. I think that on the professional side, managing a game, I think that he will be better. We need to make sure that he has all of the necessary resources to be better and make good decisions based not only on his own judgment, but information that's available. He's very open to that. So, I'm very happy that Louis is coming back. Again, both from a personal standpoint and a professional.
And I know you don't want to get too detailed about who you spoke to, but Theo Epstein became available last week. Can we assume you at least reached out to Gage if you had any interest in coming here?
No, we did not reach out to Theo. Theo has indicated a desire to take a year off. He's looking at a broad range of options, and so we did not reach out. No.
Anthony DiComo, your line is open.
Hey, Sandy. Anthony DiComo on MLB.com.
Yeah.
You mentioned, obviously going the GM route instead. Is that a long-term move in that will you consider maybe a year from now hiring a president, or is the hire you make now ultimately going to be the guy to lead baseball operations going forward?
I think that's a very good question. I think what we would like to do is find someone as general manager who is capable of growing into the other role. That would be ideal. And so that's, I think, what we're hoping for. And we'll see whether, the person that we have and the period of time between now and next season or what have you, whether that actually happens. But I think that's the goal.
And also, you mentioned various people in the organization having a hand in everything that you're doing right now. John Ricco had kind of stepped away from baseball ops. Is he doing baseball ops stuff for you guys now? And is he a candidate for that job?
So John and I have talked about it. He's not a candidate for the job. John will have what I call a multidiscipline role for us going forward. He will be sort of my right-hand person, both in terms of how I interface with baseball operations, but also with the business side. So John's going to have a somewhat different role from when I was here the last time, a similar role to the one that he had over the last couple of years.
Howie Rose, you're up next.
Hey, Sandy, Howie Rose here.
Yeah.
Wayne Randazzo's wingman on WCBS Mets Radio. This speaks a little bit to what Tony was asking you, but with regard specifically to the GM's position, has the template or the job description itself changed in the absence of hiring a president of baseball operations as you envision it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the job description for the GM.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Has changed, but I think my relationship with that GM has changed somewhat. So, as I said at the outset, I will probably be, more involved in the baseball side than originally anticipated, but I don't expect that that's going to have any impact on my role generally with the company. But I will be a little more involved with the baseball than I originally thought. But I don't think it changes the job description for the GM.
Tim Britton, your line's open.
Hey, Sandy, what qualities, Tim Britton from The Athletic, what qualities are you looking for specifically in a general manager candidate right now? What appeals to you most for that role?
Well, I think that, the type of person that I'm looking for in that role would be the type of person that I'm looking for in any leadership position. Somebody who has some modicum of experience in this particular, area, baseball, but also, someone who has the ability to provide solid, inspirational, if you will, leadership. And that's about communication. It's about empathy. It's about sort of understanding how organizations function, emphasis on teamwork, collaboration, inclusive-ness. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. Sort of a humble approach to leadership, as opposed to one that, really has to do with title and responsibility and authority. I'm looking for somebody who can work within a team. And that's what we're trying to create, not just on the baseball side, but also on the business side. And when I say that, I don't mean to suggest that, all the decisions are going to be made collaboratively, but people have to be willing to collaborate, while at the same time, we're going to try to delegate and push down as low as possible the decision-making throughout the organization, so that people feel as if they can, while they're accountable and responsible, that they also have the freedom to make decisions.
Is there a certain philosophical background in terms of baseball? Those are a lot of interpersonal qualities you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is there a baseball background that stands out to you that you would like to pursue?
Well, many candidates come from the scouting area. Some might come from an analytical background, player development, administration. There are a variety of routes to this type of position. You're not going to find anybody that's sort of done it all that would come into this position. But I think, from my standpoint, our scouting operation is very strong. Administratively, I think we do a fine job. From a player development standpoint, I think we need to improve. But I'm looking for somebody who has overall baseball credibility and more so the enthusiasm, the energy that's necessary to affect change and build out an organization over a period of time. While at the same time, look, we want to be competitive at the major league level too. So there's a lot to be done, but I'm looking for somebody who has overall ability rather than any particular, background within the baseball domain.
Isha, your line is open.
Hey, Sandy, Disha Thosar with the Daily.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're going to be taking on more responsibility than you initially anticipated. With you just kind of jumping back into this role, how comfortable do you feel taking on all of that added responsibility? And was this something that you kind of had to think about?
Something I had to think about, but I think it's born out of the circumstances. And again, I hope that we are able to hire someone who will be able to handle most of the traditional general manager role. I would expect that I will be a little more involved in decision making and mentoring. But I don't expect to get down in the weeds either. I want to make sure that we build out the organization in a way that at each level, we're functioning not on an independent basis, a coordinated basis, but allowing people to use their judgment and make choices that they understand or within a framework and based on certain principles that we have, but that someone like myself doesn't have to be involved on a decision by decision basis. I don't expect that at all.
And then just kind of switching topics, Steve Cohen tweeted that he wanted to spend that freed up contract money from Cano on the players. What are just some of your initial ideas of how you want to spend that extra money?
Well, I think first of all, we have to be mindful that there's an additional amount of money to be spent in 2021, which is already earmarked for 22 and 23. So it's not quite as easy as just an add-on. On the other hand, it does provide us some additional flexibility. The flexibility comes not only to financially in our ability to acquire players, it also gives us some additional roster flexibility, as it turns out, in terms of the players that we have and where they're best utilized. We have a number of holes to fill. We've talked about starting pitching. We've talked about the outfield. We've talked about catching. We'd like to enhance the bullpen somewhat. So we've got a lot of places where we might invest, and this definitely gives us a little more flexibility.
Mike Vaccaro, your line is open.
Hi, Sandy. Mike Vaccaro, New York Post. Happy
Yeah.
This is more a general question than maybe may or may not be attached to this, but how are you feeling? I mean,
Good. Yes, very well. Thank you.
I mean, is that was that at all any concern to adding on whatever temporary official responsibilities there might be for now?
No, that wasn't a consideration at all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question comes from Andy Martino.
Sandy, do you fully expect Cano to be with the organization after his suspension? Or I understand that doesn't affect the financial obligation, but are you considering, or would you consider releasing him?
That's not something that I think we would entertain at this point. We're just dealing with the initial impact of this and on our roster, on our off-season planning. So, if we take that decision, it's something that we'll entertain further down the road. I think that, from our standpoint, it's about dealing with the consequences at this point, not the suspension itself.
And do you know if all of Rojas's coaches will return? Has that decision been made?
That decision has not been made. But one of the reasons for making sure that Louis knew that he would be the manager was that we get started in that evaluation process and making those decisions. So that should be coming forth, in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Next question from Lindsay Kramer.
Hi, this is Lindsay Kramer from Syracuse.com and the Post Standard, covering the Syracuse Mets. So a couple Mets related questions, Sandy. Thanks for coming on. First of all, I was curious about the current contract status of Tim Tebow, if he's going to return the organization, and if so, why, and if not, why not?
So I talked to Tim Saturday in between Florida football and some other SEC obligation. He's anxious to come back. And I told Tim, look, why would you want to end your quest based on a COVID-related reason. You know, that you didn't get a chance to perform this year. He was hurt a little bit in the previous year. So, you know, I think Tim is committed to coming back, and I think we're committed to giving him an opportunity to do that. And, you know, we'll see where it goes. I mean, this is not a quest without end. At some point, you know, it will culminate. But I think that will be at a time when Tim and the organization come to some agreement about, you know, where he is and what his potential is. But I didn't want him to go out, you know, based on some COVID-related interruption of his attempt to play.
Having said that, you know, coming off the 2019 season where he was hurt and kind of a tough year, not playing this year, and then he's early 30s, mid 30s. What would you expect we'd have, you know, future wise, you know, in terms of baseball potential?
We'll see. No, I think that first of all, let me say this. I think that the organization has already benefited significantly from his involvement with the Mets and his pursuit of a baseball career. I think the Mets have benefited. I think baseball has benefited. As I said, this is not something that will go on forever. And at some point it will lose its cachet or the interest of fans. But, you know, I couldn't be happier with the way Tim has conducted himself as, you know, not only a teammate, but a representative of the Mets. So given all of that, he's entitled to another shot post-COVID, and I'm happy he's coming back.
Next question from Don Amori.
Yeah, hi Sandy, Don Amori for the Hartford Current. I just had a question for you about Steve. I'm wondering, through these first couple of weeks and as these couple of decisions have played out, what stands out to you as unique or about Steve's ownership style, about his management style, given your long experience in the game?
Well, I think what stands out the most is that is how he's embraced his ownership and his relation with the fans, predominantly through, you know, Twitter, but other means as well. And I think that, you know, what he's done is through his own enthusiasm, I think he's inspired the rest of us and created a level of energy and enthusiasm that sort of corresponds with his. So I was in Oakland when a new organization took over, a new ownership took over. You know, that wasn't exactly a social media drenched environment at that time, 1981. So to me, it's really refreshing. It's energizing. It's fun. And, you know, at the same time, I think we are being forced to be responsive and rational. He asks a lot of great questions, and you know, in terms of baseball and what he doesn't know and what he'd like to know. So he's inquisitive. So you know, it's been great so far. I have conversations with him virtually every day, often more than once, and he learns something from those conversations, and so do I. So it's been great.
Back to Steve Gelbs.
Hey, Sandy, I was just curious if you have had any discussions with Michael Conforto's people about a potential extension, and if not, if that's something that you think will happen at some point this offseason, at least exploring that possibility.
Well, I've had conversations with Michael on a variety of issues, but none related to the contract. That would be a conversation I'd have with his agent. So yes, at some point, I'm sure we will broach that topic and take their temperature and see where things stand. But right now, those conversations have not not taken place.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Tim
By
Britton,
the way, your
line's-
lighting is as bad as mine.
Tim Britton, you're up next.
Hey, Sandy, you mentioned kind of the team's needs in broad context so far. I'm wondering, where do you view this team competitively right now, coming off the shortened season that they had? How close do you think the Mets are right now to being a contender in the NL East and in the National League as a whole?
As we stand at this moment?
You know, do you think you're a player away from being right there, or is it several players? No,
I don't think we're a player away. I think we need more than that. Do we have a good foundation? Yes, I think we have an excellent foundation. But I think that, you know, our needs are multiple at this point, and that, you know, we're more than a player away. Now, you know, who that player is, what position that player, you know, plays. I think we've got some flexibility there in terms of how we address things. We're not going to address everything necessarily in the same way. We want to, you know, check all the boxes, but at the same time, you know, we're going to be focused on where we can best improve. And so I would, you know, we need to address not only some positions on the team itself, but also the depth that we have. So, you know, we're signing minor league free agents. We signed somebody to a major league contract that might have been a little out of the ordinary, but I think that those kinds of additions are addressing our depth issue. So we got a lot of things to do, but in terms of our foundation, I think we got a solid foundation, and hopefully we have you know, we have the ability to get better in a lot of different positions.
And then going back to the front office setup that you're pursuing, were you surprised that you had such limited access to other executive talent in the sport? Did you expect to be able to talk to more people and to have more serious inquisition there?
You know, initially I had higher expectations, but as we got into it and I thought about it and the environment that we're in currently, I wasn't surprised. You know, there are a lot of organizations now that are focused on front office talent. And it's not just about players. It's about how those players are utilized, which ones are kept, which ones are let go. And, you know, so front offices, and you can see this in the successful organizations that are out there, have become incredibly important. And so, you know, clubs don't like to lose those assets. And so I get it. But, you know, we're a little disappointed, but as time went on, it became clear that people are going to be careful about giving up their front office talent. Yeah.
All right. We have about three more. Lloyd, your line's open.
Hey, Sandy, welcome back to the World's Borough. You mentioned that Luis Rojas is coming back. Historically, general managers get to choose their manager. And in sports, it seems like there's a problem when the general manager doesn't have that. We see these shotgun marriages not working out. I'm just curious if there was some concern on your part making that announcement today before hiring a general manager.
You know, Lloyd, I don't have that concern, and I'll tell you why. Without exception, I think the candidates with whom we've had interviews for the GM position, we've discussed this managerial situation, and to a person, they agreed that, you know, under the circumstances, bringing Louis back as manager was the right thing to do. So it's not as if this is a unilateral decision on my part or the existing organization. We've actually talked through this with candidates to be the GM, and generally got agreement that in this particular case that was the right thing to do. So not that they were going to make the decision for us, but the issue's been broached, and I'm comfortable that this is not a shotgun marriage that will occur.
Ron Blum, your line is open.
Hi, Sandy. Do you head into 2021 at this point anticipating you'll need a designated hitter or not?
Going into 2021, hoping we need a designated hitter. I think both from a Mets standpoint and from a general baseball standpoint, that having a DH in the National League is a good thing. And, I just think that the time has come that both leagues play with the same resources, the same options, and particularly as it relates, ultimately to, say, the World Series, it's important. But also, the relationship between pitching and hitting and whether pitchers hit. I mean, the fact is, pitchers can't even bunt anymore. So I'm in favor of putting a hitter in that additional slot. And I think ultimately it makes the game more exciting, more offense or more opportunity for offense, a bigger challenge for the pitchers. I just think that we've gotten to the point where pitching has become so specialized, and the risk of injury hitting, well, I don't think it's significant. It's there. But more importantly, I just think for the overall quality of the game, the excitement level, that the DH is the right thing. And
not knowing that whether it will or will not be in place for 2021, do you proceed assuming you'll need one until you don't?
I don't think we have to proceed because I think we have options internally. We're not looking for a DH in the open market. That would be one of our lesser priorities. I just hope we have the DH so that we can better utilize what we already have.
All right. Two more. Andy Martino, your line is open.
Sandy, have you been able to conduct any of those 6 or so GM interviews in person? And if not, or if that's limited because of the pandemic, how might that impact the search or present an additional challenge to the search when you're looking for some of these deep qualities in people and you're trying to assess that over a Zoom, perhaps? How's that impacting it?
Well, there are very few of the 6 that we've interviewed that I don't know personally, that haven't interacted with, physically in real time, and not remotely. So I don't really think that's an issue. I think it's an important aspect of an interview process, but I think I've got sufficient knowledge of that person and have interacted with them in the past that doing this remotely is fine, because it's really about, an exchange of information, talking about philosophy and strategy. And so I've found the Zoom calls to be very effective.
And do you personally plan on working at the Citi Field offices prior to whenever the rest of us can leave the house with the vaccine, or are you going to be remote yourself?
Well, our offices are closed now. So, it would be possible for me physically to go there and, knock around in the offices myself. But again, right now, I think we're functioning very effectively. And in fact, I found, WebEx, Zoom, what have you, to have enhanced the level of communication based on what I'm used to than to diminish it. So I've been really happy with the ability to communicate. And I think maybe that's one of the byproducts of this health situation that we have, is that means of communication, the ability to function efficiently remotely, has really enhanced incredibly. And so it's just a matter of getting comfortable with it. And I certainly feel comfortable with it now.
Howie, the final question goes to you.
Thank you. Sandy, do you have a feel for, based on conversations you might have had with some of your executive brethren around the game, where the schedule stands? Are you fully expecting that we'll be able to get started on April 1st, or are there contingencies in place for a start that might be somewhat later with perhaps fewer games?
So before I answer that, Howie, is that beard, is that a COVID thing or is that permanent?
It is. Yeah, no, it is.
Okay. It is what? It is permanent?
It's a COVID. It's COVID rebellion, if you will.
All right. Well, good. Glad to see it. So I don't think there's anything that has actually been finalized. I think various scenarios are under consideration, and I think you have to go back to, what transpired in the off season. Well, not the off season, but the spring of last year. There are a lot of issues that have to be worked out between MLB and Players Association. I think the biggest variable right now, though, is the vaccine. And I think that's true not only for our players, but obviously for fans back in the ballpark. But if it looks like the vaccine is going to be available to the player population as we get into the spring, then I think, we'll be more encouraged about, a full season. But I think there's going to be this convergence between the baseball schedule, beginning of spring training, and the vaccine. The vaccine looks like it's going to be available, 30 days later. We might end up with a 30-day delay in spring training. I don't know. But I think that it's hard to predict that right now. But I think that's the key factor that will drive, the length of the season, the beginning of the season, and, how Major League Baseball and the union approach those issues.
Ed Coleman, I saw your hand last minute, so don't want to cut you off. We will let you have the final question.
All right, Sandy. Thanks, Harold. Clarification, really, Sandy. I assume this is going to be a collaborative venture, but you said at the opening press conference that you'd have a seat at the table, not necessarily at the head of the table. So where are you sitting now at this point?
Probably moving around the corner a little bit. So, but maybe it'll be a round table, and I'll be the only one with a chair with arms. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's that will change a little bit, I think.
Good. Thank you, Sandy, and thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. We really do look forward to being in touch again soon. And everyone have a great Thanksgiving week.
Thanks, everybody.